Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the Professor Greg Dooley and the pundit Steve Clark. Men, take the mic.
That's right, it's the Professor and the Pundit with Greg Dooley and Steve Clark. As always, we're presented by Nick Hopwood, a certified financial planner, founder, and president of Peak Wealth Management. Retire with confidence. Greg, good to have you again on the program. Michigan dispatches Rutgers as they officially open Big Ten play on their quest for a third straight Big Ten championship, 31-7. And after a little bit of a rough start, Greg, I think Michigan made it look easy.
Gorgeous day. And started off very rough, in fact. I think a lot of people might have missed that first touchdown by Rutgers, but after that settled in and we got to kind of enjoy homecoming and get to see a little of the Michigan that we've seen in years past where they just kind of choke you out in the second half. Kind of an exciting game. A few exciting moments.
The big moment to me, Mike Sainristil's 71-yard interception return to make it a 24-7 game. That essentially ended all hopes for Rutgers to win.
So this is a good opportunity. So there are captains on this team, and then there's Mikey, as they call him. And I'm pointing up in the air like he is held in a special place and a special regard with this team as a leader. And I know this from being around the program, but also listeners of this show know I got to speak to the team in fall camp. And he literally has kind of a special place on the team in the front of the room. He was actually kind of emceeing the meeting. Like when I spoke to the team, it was Mikey who introduced me, and he kind of like introduced each segment of this meeting. And that's the place he's in. And I don't even think they've had to vote for him as captain. He was kind of just named captain, and they voted on the rest, basically. And that just shows what he means to this team, and that play was incredible.
You think Blake Corum's held in the same regard as Sainristil?
So it's Mikey and Blake are 1A and 1B, and then it's the rest of the guys. And remember, the captains are seniors, so JJ wasn't eligible. So yes, if there's a close second, it's Corum, but I still think it's Mikey in a special place. And he has a special role, clearly, on the team as a spokesperson, an MC, and to see him make these huge plays like Ohio State, right, last year and this one, he's getting it done on the field too.
He started off as a wide receiver who couldn't find playing time, converted over to defensive back, immediately won everybody over with his ability to play the position, and that was just a year ago. And he's a mature guy. One of the things that I liked about in the game, just besides the play, in which he sent Junior Colson flying like it was WWE style, and, put him on his back. I just wanted Colson to hold the lower part of his back and put his arm up and go, no more, kind of thing for effect. But Sainristil during the course of the game, there was a lot of times where Rutgers flooded one side of the field with all their players, and Sainristil was on the opposite side. Now, there's a lot of people that just pin their ears back and go right for the quarterback. Sainristil was only running 60 to 70% going after him because he needed to be aware of Wimsatt's ability to spin out like JJ can spin out.
Yep.
And with everybody flooded on one side of the field, if he gets by the edge rusher, which is not really an edge rusher, he's running on a corner blitz, he spins out of that, he's got a whole lot of real estate in front of him. And because Mikey was only going 60 to 70% or so, he was aware of that potential spin out ability.
Yeah.
And there were parts in that game, if you look back at the tape, Greg, where Michigan got a tackle below the knees, around the ankles, and if they didn't get that tackle, it's another goodbye play like what happened in the first series in the first quarter.
I give their quarterback a ton of credit because he seemed to be making like the perfect read on the read option a lot, if that's the right call of the play, but he seemed to know what to do with the ball. But it did look like after we got down and we're struggling, that if the game plan was to see how much do we have to show them, what do we have to do to win, how much do we have to run JJ, I feel like we flipped it to go, no, we're in a Big Ten game. This is real. And we got to see a lot of different things, a lot of different options, maybe stuff they didn't want to show, but they had to, and they did it pretty well.
One thing that stood out to me, Greg, was that when it was third or fourth and short, Michigan has this tendency to, we're just going to bully ball and go through the middle, and teams have been starting to stop that in the first 3 games. And this is not a new play. They did it last year too, and the year before that. JJ was pulling out and running off tackle with it when everybody was sold on the fact that Corum was going to take the ball into the middle of the heart of that line. And on at least 2 occasions, McCarthy made big plays out of it.
He did. Now, does it worry you that we're not be able to impose our will on those short yardages all the time, that teams are able to stop us? Because it looks like they are.
Well, it's always better that you could announce to the world what the play is going to be and do it anyway. I mean, that's the ultimate physical football. Here we are. Does it concern me? Yeah, a little bit, that this running game is not as good as it was a year ago or how it was late in 2021. Put yourself in a situation where it's going to go into the middle or it's going to be a pullout by JJ and run around the tackle is a 50-50 play that in big critical moments where you go for it on 4th down or need to move the change, it starts becoming a 50-50 guess. And if the defensive guy guesses right, well, you could be in deep trouble and not make that play.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little concerning, not overwhelmingly concerned about it.
So you mentioned JJ. So he went from near perfection the first 2 weeks to, we got a problem. Where are you with him now?
I think the air of invincibility was within him. He could do no wrong. And when that happens, you just start doing whatever you feel like it. In basketball, it's called a heat check.
Right.
You know, guys start hitting 6 consecutive 3-pointers. All of a sudden, they think they can start hitting from center court.
Right. In gambling, it's a heater, Steve. You're on a heater, a blackjack.
So you just go with it.
Yeah.
I'm hitting on 19
okay.
because you think you can do it, because you can get away with anything.
Hell yeah. You're not supposed to hit on 19. Don't. We don't want emails and letters. All right. You call yourself a pundit and a professor?
Pundits. We're not. No. We were saying that for a fact.
And so where is he now, though? That's my question. Like, is he back forward? Is he the best quarterback in the Big Ten?
Yes, he is still the best quarterback in the Big Ten. Will he look as good as the first 2 games? Well, they're playing Big Ten competition from now on, so I'm going to say no. But he's going to be harnessed a little bit. He's going to do a little heat check himself on what he did, and I think it showed in the Rutgers game.
Okay, yeah, I think he's probably there because I'm trying to think of another name, but there's some decent quarterbacks, but no. What about on defense, man? We had a couple guys back?
Yeah, Rod Moore and Will Johnson were back, and this is so much needed, Greg, because they need experience to be playing in that secondary. You could argue, and a lot of people did, that the first touchdown that Rutgers scored was on a misplay by Moore and handling the tackle. They were saying rust. Again, not a giant concern, but that's why you kind of want to get these guys in there as soon as you can when the level of competition ramps up.
So I was down on the field in the back of the end zone. I was supposed to leave the field. I was leaving.
If you're in the process of leaving.
The band kind of, it's a slow process, but he would have landed right like in my lap had he kept running through the end zone, and you could see he just broke 3. So that was rough. But tough breakdown. It's good to have those guys back. You got to be excited about the defense. All right. So, Steve, closing thoughts. What do you think of Rutgers? What's their outlook for the rest of the year?
I think Rutgers is going bowling this year. I think they're going to go 6-2. I think they'll probably lose the remaining 4 games on their schedule, but they're going to be bowl eligible with a 6-2 record going into the month of November. And I'll add this, Greg, because I even said this before the game on the countdown to kickoff. I thought the Rutgers was going to be Michigan's toughest game on the schedule until they play Penn State on November 11th.
Okay. And I'm a little concerned about our road trips like Nebraska, Michigan State, less so Michigan State after that. We'll get to that. Less so Minnesota, I guess, after what happened to them. But I'm a little concerned about Nebraska. I mean, it's an interesting environment there. I've been there.
Anytime you play on the road in somebody else's environment, it's completely different. But I'm just looking at the teams that are on Michigan's schedule coming up. Nebraska, Minnesota, Indiana, Michigan State, Purdue. They're very bad football teams, not only relatively to who they are, but how they're performing in 2023 against the competition they've played against in 2023.
Yeah, the fan base will go in crisis mode if we lose one of these games, and we could. We could, but it will go into crisis mode.
Because they're that bad.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Nebraska, but probably what's still stuck in my head is us escaping on the slimmest of margins by stripping the ball from Martinez, stripping that ball late in the game and pulling a rabbit out of the hat just a couple years ago. What else, man? Steve, did you see out there? For fans who aren't at the game, I don't know if they show it on TV. They probably show pictures, but we have a dog who's been catching frisbees for a while, and you had an interesting observation about the dog, how many chances he gets. It's a cute, black lab, right, who does his thing.
Gets the crowd involved. It gets high vertical. But one of the things I've wondered is how long does the dog and his owner keep playing? I mean, everything on game day at Michigan Stadium is rigorously timed and accounted for. You can't have the dog weaving through players as they come back out on the field. You have to account for the dog getting tired and maybe taking his time. Maybe the dog takes a detour. Even the dog owner has a Michigan staffer with a walkie-talkie and headsets nearby monitoring because even the dog owners have handlers. I'm looking at Red Hat, who now has the TV timeout sign counting down the field. And once that sign is down to a minute, you're done. 1 minute left. No more throwing frisbee. You got it? You understand? We got it. We got to get you out of here.
Yeah, and just to be clear, this isn't like throwing a frisbee from me to Steve here in the studio. This dude is winging the frisbee down 40 yards down the field, and this dog is ears pinned going for it. And he struggled a little yesterday, I noticed, making the catches, but it's cute. And Michigan does have a history. You had Whiskey. The dog used to run and chase a ball in the 70s, and we've had different things. Michigan State fans listening. Zeke the Wonder Dog. A little bit of a tradition here.
It feels like it's Michigan State's, but you're telling me Michigan was doing it in the 70s too with a tennis ball or something.
It was like
that.
A soccer ball, and there were two of them, Whiskey and Brandy, I think their names were, and they would run around. They would just chase the ball and kind of kick it around, and to the delight of the maize and blue.
Well, based on what we know about Michigan 70s fans, I guess Whiskey got the ball, then they all had a shot of whiskey.
Pretty much.
And if Brandy got it, they all had a shot of brandy from the crowd when they weren't throwing toilet paper.
A little birdie told me there might be some loosening of the alcohol policy in the stadium, too, coming up next year. I don't know if it'll translate through fans, but I think upstairs, I've heard that there will be options available in the suites and things like that. That's what I've heard. So I wouldn't be surprised, though. You can't just do that for the suites and not offer it for the rest. So keep an eye on that, Steve. Put a tickler on that for next year.
As someone who has had a drink or two, yes, I will keep my eye on it.
What else from the game? It was homecoming. I got a picture there's a 90-year-old cheerleader who's been around for a long time. Obviously, they do the Michigan, the M-I-C-H with the band and the crowd before the game at homecoming, where the guy stands up and waves the flag to indicate the next letter. I love that. They celebrated the championship teams from years past, ending in 3, right? So the 2023.
So it's an anniversary date.
Yeah, so they go by decade. So notably, they had the baseball national championship team from 1953. There were just a couple of the members there. They're in wheelchairs. So these teams marched out and were recognized in the stadium and went under the banner. They had the sign for the 53 team. They had wheelchairs at the tunnel.
Because they're born in 31.
They just took a right turn, though, and they didn't actually come out on the field. They just kind of out of the tunnel and just right over to the side.
The spotlight cameo, the music's already playing before they even had a chance to talk.
You got it. Well, they also recognized the 1973 football team. Now, Steve, do you know and remember the significance of the 1973 team?
That's the year that Michigan football got screwed by Big Ten athletic directors.
It's the 10-10 tie. It's the famous vote. This is also the 1973 Ohio State game is what we're talking about. They ended in a 10-10 tie. This is also where Ohio State came out and tore down the banner before the game. And Bob Ufer's call.
They will meet a dastardly fate here for that.
Yeah, this is a very significant team in Michigan history. So as soon as you say 1973 to guys like me and Steve, our brains go right to the Big Ten vote. Did Commissioner Wayne Duke influence some of the vote? What did Dennis Franklin, the quarterback, he was injured in the game, did that influence the vote?
I think it did.
Yeah, and so to have the best team represent the Big Ten in the Rose Bowl.
I think some of the schools that voted saw Dennis Franklin's injury. And I think a couple of the schools says, how can we stick it to Michigan or how can we stick it to Ohio State?
Yeah, well, here's the reasonable. So you ask people about this today who remember, and they spit on the ground, and Wayne Duke, and really it's Crazy Legs Hirsch, who played at Michigan during the war. Wisconsin AD voted for Ohio. You have the AD at Michigan State, Bert Smith, who went to Michigan, voted obviously for Ohio. Like, we know this now. And it's bitterness. However, okay, just turning it around. The fact is, Ohio State did play the game here in Ann Arbor and did tie us here on the road. And people say, well, the stats, the fact that Ohio State went the year before, or I think they went the year before.
They did.
Yeah, and so for those reasons, Michigan should have been selected. But if you just look at it on paper and forget about the previous stuff, I mean, if we went into Ohio and tied them in their place, that says something, right? So I do give Ohio credit for that in the net of it. That said, it does look like devious things happen behind the scenes, and there's huge, huge bitterness. And gosh, I hope we never have to do that again. I think our Big Ten rules now, as we're set up now, don't require, but there is like the ninth tiebreaker is like a coin flip or something. It's not a vote.
It gets really bad.
Yeah.
Let's not go
Wouldn't
there.
that be something?
Let's just not go there, because there is an opportunity for this to go really down the point level.
What else, Steve? I saw Coach Beeline upstairs. I might have booked him to my leadership class. Hey, man.
Might have?
Hey, we're all working.
Okay.
We're all working on game days. Just I'm working on different things.
Yes.
Okay.
But what's the might
I got
have?
a verbal. I got
got
a
a
verbal
verbal.
commitment.
Oh, well,
but
that's good.
What does that mean? Well, I don't have a date. Okay. I don't,
I see.
and I only have a few slots left.
So he said, call my office.
Text me. We're buddies now.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Speaking of buddies, Coach Herb, who is not my friend, and I'll explain why. Coach Herb, the amazing strength coach and associate head coach of the football team. Did you see that?
Yes.
He's added to his title.
Yes.
To my knowledge, he's the highest paid in the world at what he does. I don't know who he makes $1 million a year. He can actually make 1.4. How do I know this?
Okay.
He told the class. Was he bragging? Was he doing it to tell everyone how great he is? No. He told everyone, and he went on to explain why he does not care. His whole point was, this is not why I do this. I'll just put it this way. I've kind of like having him speak now 3 times in my class. What he is almost like, and don't laugh, it's like a modern day monk. And what he does and how he conducts himself, he's a very simple person in how he conducts his life and in his relationships, right? He's all about his job. And that's what it takes to be the best at what you do. But also, if you've ever seen a picture of Herb, what's he wearing? He's wearing the same thing. He wears this PSNY Jordan outfit. He wears it. I think they wash it, and he puts it on. He brings his food in a Tupperware. He goes in there at 4 a.m. in the morning, comes home to his drives home. He talks about relationships with other people. He doesn't have deep friendships with people, and he kind of explains why. He's really, really an interesting study of what it takes to be the best, but also you can count on Herb, and he's an amazing guy, and he has great relationships with people, but he keeps them intentionally a bit at arm's length and doesn't fall into some of the conventional trappings and expectations around friendships that we have today. I think it was really tough for some of my students to wrap their head around this stuff. So we spent a lot of time talking about Herb's words, what he meant by it, what the significance of it. He's really a fascinating guy. So there's certain classes where I invite like my son or other people I know. I go, you should really come and hear Herb speak, because it's something else. And it's awesome. He's a great dude. He's just a fascinating guy. You get a little insight in the weight room and how they conduct their business, and some cool stories about transformations of guys. I mentioned Uche. He shows the before-after picture of Josh with the data, all the stats like that they measure. There's like probably 100 different measurables. Like they're all red and orange, meaning, bad, in the bad range. And then they show him like right before the NFL draft, like all green and all his rankings and everything. And it looks like a Mr. Universe. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, Michigan's done pretty well in the draft. Michigan seems to improve their positions in the draft from the end of the season to the actual draft day.
Well, I think it's so important. I mean, you're talking about people who are 18 to 23, 24, right? How much does a pro develop their body and expand their body at 25 and on? Like, this is the time when you have that opportunity for a huge transformation. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the recruits who come in here. Even a 5-star recruit isn't going to ragdoll one of our linemen. They have to develop, and that's why it's so important. Everyone thinks they have the best strength coach or they have pride around. I think, the proof's in the pudding with Michigan and Herb and what he's doing. And good on Harbaugh and the coaching staff for recognizing it and paying him. I don't know if that happens. Like, to pay a strength coach $1 million is a big deal with incentives, I think. And to name him, don't look past that. He's associate head coach. Okay, it's a title. They're basically telling him how much he means to this program through that title. And it's very symbolic of what Herb means, and I think it's really cool.
It's halftime on The Professor and the Pundit, and Nick is now joining us in studio. And Nick, when it comes to retirement, I've tried a few different retirement calculators, and I've discovered that if my spending or income is off by just $100 a month, well, the endgame answer for me can be dramatically different to make me question, when can I really do this?
So it's good that you're isolating variables and saying, well, what if this scenario happens or that scenario? Maybe it's with your rate of return or inflation or your retirement age. But why do you have to go recreate the wheel and do it yourself? Wouldn't it be better working with someone who's done it 400 times already?
That's probably one of the first things you do with people after you get to know them is, okay, we got to understand, what are your goals, right? I would assume these are conversations you have,
yes,
which are all variables for you.
Yeah, we want to understand what your goals are and what's important to you. Those are some of the first conversations that we want to have. Okay, I hate talking about budgeting, but I do have a sweet spreadsheet where I track expenses and net worth each month. This is a minimum thing that everyone should be doing, but nobody does. Because if you're spending $15,000 per month living your life right now, we need to say what expenses will still be there in retirement. And maybe your mortgage will be paid off, and maybe the kids will be out of the house. So you only need $10,000 a month. But here's the problem. People just don't know what that goal is. I want you to do real homework for months and months. And, a lot of people still don't do it, but it's mission critical, in my opinion.
And Nick, if people want to know more, how can they get a hold of you?
You can schedule an appointment with us at peakwm.com or give us a call at 734-681-7575.
One more time with that phone number?
734-681-7575.
Yeah, and can I say something like the new IRA limits and the 401k limits came out, and that stuff, we all have busy lives. Like Nick, they put that stuff on clockwork. They make sure you're taking advantage of all the things the government offers us. That's the guy, okay? So he's on it. This is what he does, man. So call Nick. If you want to support the show, have a conversation with him. Get to know him. See if he's right for you or your family. But a huge thanks, Nick, because without you, I don't know if this show happens. And shout out to our man, Nick Hopwood.
All right, Greg, lots of news in the Big Ten this week. Let's start with Ohio State, who beat Notre Dame with 1 second remaining. And Ryan Day goes all WWE on writing his own narrative on toughness.
Toughness, that's it. Physicality, across the board, finish it off, having guts. I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now. What he said about our team, I cannot believe. This is a tough team right here. We're proud to be from Ohio, and it's always been Ohio against the world, and it'll continue to be Ohio against the world. But I'll tell you what, I love those kids, and we got a tough team.
What did they prove to you tonight in this victory that you'll take away and run with?
Toughness. Everybody's questioning these kids all the time. We had one bad half the last couple years. That's it. Everybody wants to question these guys. These guys are warriors right here. To come back and win, this kid right here to come back in the second half and win, I'm emotional about this for a reason. A lot of people question these kids and say a lot of things about them.
So odd. I saw he acknowledged one bad half. So this team's had one bad half. So he can't get Michigan out of his head. So we know that.
Yep.
Yeah, or out of his ears, apparently. And Ohio against the world, like since when? And also, so you're okay with us referring to you as Ohio then, okay? Can we just say that, right? I mean, and then there was more from the locker room.
Yes, let me play it.
Again, I said it earlier, I'll say it again. A lot of people took a lot of shots at this team over the last 48 hours, and it really hit home to me. And, the way that our team played, not only did we physically get after these guys last year, but we did it again here at the end of the game. And I think it says a lot about this team. And, I'm really upset and disrespected by what Lou Holtz said publicly about our team and Ohio State and Buckeye Nation. And we're not going to stand for that, because that's not even close to true. We had one bad half a couple years ago up in Ann Arbor. We did in the second half. But every game we play in, we're physical. We are. I don't know where that narrative comes from, but that ends tonight. This team right here showed toughness. They showed grit. They didn't give up, and they found a way to get that last yard. And I'm sick over those short yardages that we didn't finish, but that's the game. And the last matchup game we were in, we were one play short. This play, we finished it the right way, and I'm really proud of our team.
Coach, yes, who's this? Yes, I have a follow-up question. Is there an asterisk on this win and on your toughness since Notre Dame only had 10 men in the field for the last two plays? Right? And by the way, thanks for reminding us about, he said the second half up in Ann Arbor. What about last year in Columbus? Okay, whatever.
Look, Ryan Day's toughness mentality, it started in 2021, accused of being out-toughed by Michigan. Went on and on about it after beating the Irish last year in Columbus on the running game of Evan Pryor. Legit statement at the time, but you could tell that he was banging the drum on his own personal cause. I sincerely believe he not only wanted to beat Michigan in 2022 in Columbus by stopping our run, but he also wanted to show that his run game was even superior to Michigan's. And his effort to make that statement, Greg, despite being shorthanded, led him to change what was working for them, throwing the ball downfield. And the whole thing backfired when they were down, and eventually 2 long runs by Donovan Edwards solidifying the physicalness of what Michigan does. And it just recertified the fact that Michigan is tougher than Ohio State. It was a double dose shot for Ryan Day and the Buckeyes. Fast forward to last Saturday. As we know, Ohio State, with the game on the line, made a 1-yard run to win the game. It was close as you could get, Greg, to crossing the line before his knee went down. All props to Chip Trainum. But the physical narrative about Ohio State has gotten so personal for Ryan Day. Quote, I'm sick about those short yardages that we didn't finish. And then he moved on. Yes, Ryan, that's the most important part. Those short yardages that you didn't get. Like second quarter, 3rd and goal from the 1. No gain up the middle. Then 4th and goal. You don't even try to run, Ryan. You turn it over on downs after an incomplete pass. Let's go to the 4th quarter. 4 minutes left. 3rd and 1. No push, no gain up the middle. 4th down. It's potentially your last play you'll get. You thought your best option? You went for a jet sweep. That it too also failed. That is the narrative you're asking about. How did this get started? The whole world is talking about your team in this way. 4th and 1 jet sweeps, failing to do quarterback sneaks, failing to get those easy first downs. A tough physical football team, Ryan Day, kicks up dirt and turf, puts their head down, pads down, and gets a yard. Jet sweeps? Those are for finesse teams, Ryan. Finesse teams like yourself. Now, Ryan Day's right. They showed grit. They showed mental toughness. Kyle McCord grew up to be a leading Big Ten quarterback last Saturday night. But yell all you want, Ryan, about declaring it's over.
Over? Did you say over?
It's not over. Your play calling and execution of those plays showed it's very much alive and well that you are a finesse team and not a physical team. And if you want to dare and try that we're tougher than you physically game plan on Michigan and Ann Arbor this year, well, they'll be glad that you haven't learned from your mistakes, and Michigan will make it 3 in a row.
And if you have to explain how tough you are multiple times in the postgame, you're probably not tough, okay? Tough teams don't have to explain their toughness, right? Okay, they're just tough. They're just tough. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to create a narrative around toughness. Give me a break. So, I don't know, man. It's funny. And then Lou Holtz, here's some advice if toughness is your brand. Don't tear up. Don't get all red-cheeked, okay? So are you tough or are you emotional? Well, wait, you're emotionally tough, and you're calling out Lou Holtz, who's what, about 4'10", and how old, 86 years old or something?
He's in his 80s, no longer coaching. He's like a figurehead of history, and you're really that upset over what he has to say.
Yeah, and by the way, of course, he's associated with Notre Dame forever. Lou Holtz, okay, so, it's not like National Pundit said.
Pundits.
It's Lou Holtz.
Look, we're making a big deal. Like Lou Holtz is never not going to pick Notre Dame.
Oh my
like
God.
Charles Woodson and Desmond Howard's never not going to pick Michigan. These are just known things.
Yeah, well, it's clear he goes, well, if we win this game, I'm going to say some things, But if you prepare, like, come a little stronger.
This was an important win for the Big Ten.
Credit. Notre Dame is good. Like we were talking about Hartman on the way in, Steve. Like, good quarterback, very efficient, very smart, puts the ball where it needs to be, makes the right play every time. Notre Dame, okay, maybe not the toughest place to play in the world, but getting that win on that stage, credit to Ohio State. And yeah, the Big Ten, this is good, right? We struggle with this. Yeah, it's good for Michigan. It's good for the Big Ten that Ohio State won this game. It's good for our brand. It's good for our prospects in the playoff when things shake off.
The Big Ten has only one ranked win.
Oh, so far this year.
One ranked win in non-conference play.
Oh, okay.
That was it.
Okay.
If
right.
Ohio State lost that one, the Big Ten would finish non-conference play without beating a ranked team.
Okay.
That's a problem if there are multiple teams from multiple conference vying for one of those 4 coveted playoff spots. And you got a whole bunch of losses in top 25 to go up against that. And for Michigan's sake, Michigan needs a stronger resume. Beating a 1-loss Buckeye team or a 2-loss Buckeye team is not as good as being an undefeated Buckeye football team. You're right. Michigan has to beat Ohio State to be in the playoff, probably has to beat Ohio State to win the Big Ten East. Still, you want some credibility with your conference. Big Ten is resting on its credibility of the conference. It rested on its credibility to get 2 teams in last year. It probably won't get 2 teams in this year, but if there's an argument to be made, you got to look at the credibility of the conference. Ohio State restored some of that credibility.
Yeah, big time. It's good.
How it hurts Michigan is this may have galvanized Ohio State as a football team. It certainly gave them confidence, probably did wonders for Kyle McCord going forward. I mean, this is a guy who was dumped on from week 1, really struggled. Kyle McCord is nowhere near on the same level as Justin Fields or C.J. Stroud, and Kyle McCord just took a big leap with the way he played in the fourth quarter with the team being down and needing to execute the way he did.
And look, as much as we teased Ryan Day here, we did quite a bit. Maybe some of the guys in the locker room needed to hear that, what he said. So maybe the message was for them. Maybe it resonates for them. Toughness is a mindset to some extent, and he shows us that he's got their back. So there's something to say there. All right, so rest of the Big Ten, Steve, some kind of weird results, some really good, some really bad. So I didn't watch any of the Iowa-Penn State. I assume you had one eyeball on it, and Mrs. Steve Clark was watching her Hawkeyes. 4 first downs for Iowa.
Yeah, it's same old with Iowa. It's now just about ranking the Hawkeyes' biggest disappointments over the last few years.
Ouch.
76 yards of total offense. The Hawkeyes had more fumbles than first downs, 6-4. Penn State had 45 minutes in the time of possession. How about this, Greg? 97 plays for Penn State. Iowa had 33. And this from the Hawkeye Insider at 24/7 Network. Over the past 5 seasons, no other team in the FBS has been outsnapped by 60 or more plays.
No, that's incredible. That's an incredible stat, yeah.
97-33. And all Kirk Ferentz can do there is sit there and preach patience and say, we're not going to rewrite the playbook. We're not going to do anything drastic. The most drastic thing is the statistics that your offense is putting up compared to your defense and special teams, which is national championship caliber. An average offense with that defense and special teams would be going places. They would be a playoff contender. They could represent the West. They could actually maybe beat a team in the Big Ten East, but they refuse to address the offense.
So you answered my question. So they're not going to make any changes. They're not going to change Brian Ferentz. They're not going to change his role. They're not going to try to do something different with Cade McNamara.
So this drive for 325,
yeah,
for one, is a national joke because everybody's making fun of it. We're making fun of it. But locally, they also know that if he doesn't make it, he's not getting fired. It just means the contract's over.
Yeah.
And that he doesn't get his incentives. It doesn't mean that they can't have a different contract going forward.
I don't know what the equivalent of this at Michigan is, but people would be calling for the head coach's head. I know, like, Ferentz has a special rarefied place, but, I mean, they've got to be so frustrated right now, man.
They are. And
Yeah.
to the point of giving up, if they do a history thing, they'll be very thankful for Kirk Ferentz. But
Yeah.
the last 5 years, his son, his offense, just basically ignoring the outcry from the public and the media about what's going on and pretend it's not there and it's not an issue is almost like a Mark D'Antonio way of going down times 10.
Oh, boy.
Because, Mark D'Antonio didn't exactly leave the way he probably wanted it to be left, or the Michigan State fan base wanted it to be left. But Michigan State is also in a world of hurt right now, and they lost to Maryland 31-9 in a game that was not competitive as well, and we didn't expect it to be.
We've talked about this, though, Steve, and you're one of the guys that says, be careful with NIL and the transfer portal because literally teams can be built up, Colorado. Teams can be wiped out if the wrong set of circumstances happen. And I can't imagine a more wrong set of circumstances with their coach, with what's going on right now for State. So let's get into this. So they have and are probably going to have a serious, serious problem with their roster right now. The guys on the team, forget about the recruits and the commitments. The guys on the team, they don't know who their coach is going to be. They don't know who their staff is going to be. And they're in a really, really miserable situation with the results in the field. So what is the outlook for the rest of the season? What's the point?
The biggest concern is Michigan State just played its 4th game. Players for any team can play 4 games, and as long as they haven't used their red shirt, they haven't lost a year of eligibility. And they can also transfer within...
And by the way, it's number of games, not through the 4th game, right? So, in other words, the players who have played in each of the first 4 games, just to be clear.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you've got starters that Michigan State depends on have played 4 games. Some of them haven't, like Jacoby Windman didn't play, so he still only played 3. But we're getting to a point where players have played enough games where they will lose their eligibility if they play in their 5th personal game.
Yes.
Within 30 days of Mel Tucker officially being fired, they can go into the transfer portal. And then they can go somewhere else, and if it's their first time transferring, it's fine. Change of coaches, waivers, all these things can be worked out. But there's a key here to when the players see this line, this green line or red line, about how much they can play without costing themselves a year. And that line has rapidly approached for many of the players on that roster. So what does that mean? Does this mean that all of a sudden a dozen players are going to quit for the sake of themselves and having an advantage of going somewhere else next year without losing a year of eligibility? Yeah, that's a possibility. Now, they've already made it public that they've asked the team, are any of you guys feeling like giving up? We won't hold it against you. We understand. Raise your hand. Now, nobody's going to be doing that right now, but there's going to be thought to it. But it is a situation I think Michigan State realizes that is happening, so they've addressed the question with their team. Harlan Barnett in the postgame Michigan State Network was just basically pleading for the listeners to keep supporting us.
Yeah, stay with us.
It is.
Ticket holders.
It is rare to hear something like that. It's honest, it's desperate, and Michigan State recognizes how fragile things are right now within the program, not only with roster management, but with public and private support.
Now, yeah, and can I build on your roster? Stay with us, team stay with us, but remember, it's not just the 2 deep, the guys who are playing, because if those guys leave or decide, hey, I want to protect my eligibility, well, who's going to fill their slots? The guys who probably thought they were going to redshirt or were told they were going to redshirt, they've got to move up, and now they've got to play and burn their redshirt, right, and burn their eligibility. So they've got a decision to make too. That's the domino that could happen here.
Right.
The other thing is, it's not so secret that while there's 85 scholarships that can be funded by the school and the university, players 86 through 100 and whatever, they are, quote unquote, Steve, funded through NIL opportunities at many, many schools. So there's kind of a NIL partnership, if you will, with a lot of those players to effectively fund them. So a coach can say, no scholarship, but there are other opportunities to help with your education here. The donors right now are in the same situation. Well, what did we fund? What did we do? The businesses maybe behind this, the people, the donors behind this. Now they're watching. They are. I know they are. They're watching to go, well, what about these other guys that we kind of guaranteed? Was it contingent on them obviously playing? Probably. Being a part of the team? Sure. Are they still going to fund those things? Okay, so now can they stay in their classes? Or is it already bought and paid for? Does the university have their money for this semester? They're supposed to. But that's not exactly how it's being done. It's through opportunities, right? Which are probably not all prepaid. It adds a layer of complication
Well,
here.
what it does is if you decide in the moment to preserve your eligibility for the future and say, I am leaving the football team or I'm no longer playing, but I'm still on the football team, there is a question about whether some form of NIL payment continues. Does it drop dead on a dime as soon as you hit the transfer portal?
Well,
there's a lot of questions about Michigan State right now that is too tough to answer. But there are some things that are pivotal on the field and off the field coming up in the next few weeks as players hit that fourth game.
Yes, and we're still in the phase of NIL where it's still new, and a lot of people are providing NIL deals to help the team. Okay, it's not just a business opportunity where JJ's doing a great endorsement for a yoga company. Some of this is to prop the team, the prospects of the team. Well, if you're on the other side of that deal where you're the one donating the money, you're kind of done with this team, right? So why wouldn't you just save your money and focus on either other sports or next year, like whoever that coaching staff is? And we may not hear of any of this, Steve. That's the thing. This is all going to be kind of quiet in the shadows. But I know that these thoughts are going on both ends of this right now. So next week will be interesting to see what happens, what we hear about, what we learn, who announces that they're not part of the team, how the team responds.
One last game that I want to mention is that Northwestern came back from 21 points down in the fourth quarter to Minnesota. And hats off to Minnesota.
Did they win it for Fitz? Was it for Fitz?
Yeah, I don't know if they won it for Fitz, but A.J. Henning actually scored the touchdown with 2 seconds remaining in regulation to force that tie, by the way. He never scored at Michigan, by the way, if you know, as a receiver.
Is that right?
He never scored a touchdown to Michigan as a receiver, but he scored this particular big moment for the Northwestern Wildcats. And P.J. Fleck, I'm just wondering if the window of opportunity for him at Minnesota is starting to close. Did he peak? Is it still a building process? He's kind of been linked as a possible scenario of going to Michigan State. What do you think of that?
Yeah, so I don't think he's probably a good fit for Michigan State. He doesn't strike fear in my heart. But the only reason I think he would leave Minnesota is if he's running away from something. Like he's lost support. There have been some off-the-field stuff that I haven't heard much about anymore, about some behavior in the locker room and how he treats players, only if he's trying to hide from something. But that's the last person State wants, is someone with skeletons in their closet somewhere else to come there. So I think it's a long shot. I kind of like his style. I think he's good for Minnesota, but this is the kind of game, that Northwestern game, that you have to win that game. If you're P.J. Fleck and you're trying to build a program, you have to win that one.
Michigan's playing Nebraska.
Yes.
This weekend. And
what's going on with their team?
I'm kind of looking forward to it because Nebraska is a train wreck right now and from an injury standpoint. At the time of this recording, we do not know the status of quarterback Jeff Sims. He has missed the last 2 games with an injury. So their third-string quarterback, because Chubba Purdy is also out. Michigan played against Chubba Purdy last year when Nebraska came to Michigan. Didn't put any fear in our hearts. A running quarterback. This is sort of the same thing. Third-string quarterback Heinrich Harburg is a Nebraska native. He has started the last 2 games, and it's quite clear that he likes running the ball. I mean, it's 98 yards rushing a week and a half ago. This past Saturday, he rushed for 157 yards, passed for only 107. Their new number 1 running back, Anthony Grant, had 135 yards last week. He was the former number 1 running back with nearly 1,000 yards in 2022, but he was relegated to third string after that critical fumble that happened in Minnesota at the end of game 1 when Nebraska looked like they were going to clinch and win the game. Open field, got caught from behind, fumbled the football. He hadn't played much. The injuries have forced him back to be the new RB number 1. Harburg and Grant rushed 41 times last Saturday out of 48 rushing plays. So it's those 2 guys. Meanwhile, they occasionally throw it to the tight end, Thomas Fidone. Pretty decent. He had 1 catch last Saturday, but it was for a 29-yard touchdown. And the thing that Nebraska can hang their hat on is their defense. Their defense has been playing well enough to win games and get bowl eligible. They've held their 4th straight opponent to under 60 yards rushing. So I think they will challenge Michigan's rushing game a bit.
And I'll get more specific about the Nebraska football team coming up on the midweek peak during the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA with Sam Webb and Ira Weintraub. Wednesday, just past 9 o'clock. Like, what happened to the receiving corps? And are the black shirts back?
Okay. Michigan does have some shared history with Nebraska. Some of you may know that Fielding H. Yost, our iconic athletic director, he coached Nebraska in 1898 for one season as he was making his way across the country coaching different teams, and is actually, Steve, in the Nebraska Football Hall of Fame. Look it up for his one season there. That is hooking your wagon to an iconic coach and going, well, he needs to be in our Hall of Fame, right? So that's funny. One thing that's interesting about Nebraska is they attempted to join the Big Ten, obviously recently, but at the turn of the 20th century, they tried several times to join the Big Ten. Like, they've always wanted to get in. So this obviously predates the Big Eight and all that stuff. What else with them? Had an incredible trip to Lincoln in 1911. It's kind of famous. They treated us like kings. They hosted after the game the fans and the team to like a massive dinner. Their band learned all our songs. They requested our sheet music so they could learn the Victors and Varsity and play all this stuff. So we have an interesting tie there. And I think a lot of that was because old Yost was coming back to Nebraska, and there was obviously a strong relationship there. I've been to Lincoln. Have you seen a game in Lincoln?
No.
I've actually seen a Nebraska-Iowa game there. Why? I was at a wedding. The vibe there, it's very much a professional, despite the fact they don't have beer. They're the last team to have beer in the stadium or allowed. It's very professional. I always joke, the game ball was literally delivered by a mini UPS truck. And here it is, the game ball for kick. Oh, it's on this cute little UPS truck. Every timeout was Mutual of Omaha. They had a guy like Duffman with a gigantic T-shirt cannon coming out, and it was sponsored by Warren Buffett or See's Candies or something, Berkshire Hathaway. Everything was sponsored, and no one cared. And of course, it's just a sea of red. Very loyal fans, very friendly. When they came here for that first game when they joined the Big Ten, it was very vivid how many people came and just how kind, and you have a lovely stadium, blah, blah, blah.
But they talk a lot of smack. For a team that hasn't done anything in 10 to 15 years, they talk a lot of smack.
Well, we were in that boat, too.
I don't care.
The table's
very, very high.
Yeah, and let's just hope we can get in there with a comfortable win, no injuries, that kind of thing. They're obviously still looking for their big statement win, but this season is clearly a pass with a new coach and, the end of the Scott Frost era, which is weird. We've always had that Scott Frost vibe and that 97 team vibe with this game the last several years, and that's gone. So we'll see what emerges, but something will emerge.
So we're looking forward to reviewing that game as well as all the new stories that are going on with the Big Ten and, of course, with the University of Michigan. And we'd like to thank again Nick Hopwood, who is the founder and president of Peak Wealth Management, for sponsoring our program once again. Without him, it is not possible. And we thank you for taking time out of your week and a busy week and a lot of different pods to listen to, that you listen to ours. So we thank you very much for that. And I'd like to remind you as we close off that Michigan are back-to-back Big Ten champions once again, looking for a three-peat. Go Blue, Greg.
And all-time winning. It's 993 wins and counting, Steve. Go Blue.